You know and I know it's got nothing to do with US security or fears about China and Russia, both of whom Donald Trump looks up to like a little brother or a small boy looking up to the biggest bully in the history of the school. His designs upon Greenland are entirely corrupt and self-interested, just as his designs upon Venezuela are, in my humble opinion. So how does his dream come true, and how do the rest of us stop it? Let's start with Michael, who's in Greenwich. Michael, what would you like to say?
Well, I think, I'm very concerned. And first of all, I think the way that Trump could make this all come to pass is just the U.S. already has a base in Greenland at Bidufik on the northwest coast. You just expand that exponentially. You just move in troops, and they're already on the coast. You bring in naval assets, and then say, well, it's done. They don't have to invade; they're already there. They don't have to land.
So the first thing they would do then is take down the Dannebrog, the Danish national flag, which must be flown at the base at all times to recognise that the base is on Danish territory.
Yeah, and then NATO at this point is, for most purposes, defunct.
Yeah. Since
the U.S. is no longer reliable. So then Denmark can appeal to the other European powers, but realizing that there are 100,000 U.S. troops based in Europe, including a fairly large, about 10,000 here in the U.K. So you say, okay, we're going to. They already occupy a large part of Europe and have military assets here.
I know you don't. I know you share our concerns, but you're making it sound worryingly feasible.
Well, I think it is, and what bothers me is that no one, though you have, so few people have taken this seriously. No one should be surprised.
Well, in terms of media, I'm not here to speak for anybody else, but they can't take it seriously without admitting that they've been absolutely horribly wrong about Trump from the very, very beginning. So the more that his critics are proved right, the more people who used phrases like Trump derangement syndrome as a pejorative, or write Daily Mail columns even today about how Keir Starmer should be more like Trump, the more they are held hostage by their own ridiculousness, ignorance and treachery, really. So I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. It's gratifying to see it on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. It's gratifying to hear the UK Prime Minister talk about it at all, acknowledge the urgency and the importance of the question. But what worries me is that the relatively casual nature of your description, and that they're already there at Bidufik. They are obviously militarily supported across Europe by their own troops, by their own forces, all of which leads to one inevitable question, which is, well, two inevitable questions. What does pushback look like, and when would it start? At what point? I mean, let's say, because at the moment, as I say, the Danish flag flaps alongside the Stars and Stripes at this base in Denmark. If they were, you could focus a camera on it, and they were to lower the Danish half of that marriage, does NATO do something then? What would pushback look like, and when would it actually happen?
My other concern is that as the Danish flag goes down, Russia moves in the Baltics and takes one small town in Estonia as a challenge. And then Europe is faced with attempting to defend, at least ostensibly, a NATO ally against Russia. Or do they take on the United States, and they're already faced with the potential of a two-front war. The United States in Greenland and in all of their bases in Europe, and a Russia that is being encouraged by the U.S. to act. And so I think there's a real serious.
And that takes us back. I don't know if you were listening at 10 o'clock. That takes us back to the scenario outlined by Yuval Noah Harari in April of last year, when he talked about a world of rival fortresses in which the United Kingdom would belong in none. Just on that question of the US incremental annexation of Greenland, they do that with numbers, with boots on the ground, arguably without a single shot being fired, and then they start digging stuff up and helping themselves to it, because that's the point of the whole process.
Well, that's the point. And again, this all could be done incrementally. And I think the challenge for the UK is, what position do they take? And my fear is that they'll say, well, we'll be neutral, because, you've got, in a sense, a third column here, which is saying Russia good, NATO bad. Who are more than willing to celebrate any success of Donald Trump.
We've got our opinion polls are currently led by a man who's a lot closer to Russia than he is to NATO.
Well, you kind of wonder who's financed parts of that. But anyway.
Well, we know who financed his leader in Wales, and we know who financed his close friend and protege, Nathan Gill. That was a Kremlin stooge, getting him to parrot Kremlin talking points. But you're right, we do wonder who finances the rest of that bizarre political project. And I mean, neutrality notwithstanding, what would, internationally speaking, what does NATO look like without American leadership, or without? I mean, I don't know who breaks the glass to sound the alarm. Do you see what I mean?
Well, it should have been broken a year ago.
I know that.
But I think I think it really will come down to, what are people willing to sacrifice, and what are they willing to risk? I mean, I still think, as long as, and you said this earlier in the show, as long as money is everything, as long as growth at any cost, as long as we're more concerned about, the cost of living than we are democracy or freedom or any of those more abstract, at least ostensibly abstract. I don't think they're abstract at all.
No, but I take your point.
Those concerns, then we're gonna say, well, we've got to keep trade going, and it's better. We don't really want to have to face tariffs, and we're not really in a position, to do much about the U.S. bases in Laken Heath and Mildenhall anyway. And so, it will be a supine Europe. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but unless people are willing to say, well, as Ben Franklin said, we all hang together, they hang us all separately.
That's beautifully put. I was going to quote Kissinger back at you, but it would feel inappropriate in the circumstances. Thank you, Michael. And I mean, obviously, we all hope you're wrong, but that grasp of the possibility is quite chilling. And it leads inevitably, inexorably, to the second question that we're asking this hour, which is, what would pushback look like? And of course, where is it going to come from? Is it going to come from Ursula von der Leyen? Does the European Union exist in that space? We were talking about defending Ukraine, creating a necessity. The awfulness of Donald Trump, the dilution of NATO, and the vulnerability of Ukraine, creating the necessity for more European military. Germany in the post-war unprecedented position of increasing military spending, and I think even considering conscription, was it, or doing conscription at some point. Traitors in this country warning against the European army for the best part of 20 years. When, of course, the only people who would be celebrating in Europe if the United States were to invade or annex Greenland would be Russians.